about what the president says. Porous borders. It was one of the key elements in the president's address today. You'd recall that for about a month, JoyNews focused on the state of Ghana's land points of entry, revealing how porous the borders are. The president has been assuring of government security interventions to protect our borders, as he also comments on the Nigerian border closure. In this part of the encounter, he also backs Guta's enforcement of the GIPC Act on retailing in Ghana, saying Nigerians cannot complain about how Ghana enforces its laws, just as the country is doing in Nigeria. He, however, raises caution against people taking the law into their own hands.
All of these basic foodstuffs in the country have seen significant increases under the program of Planting for Food and Jobs. We no longer import maize into this country. We're doing so before I came into office. We're doing so from our neighbors. On the contrary, today we're in a position to be net exporters of food to our neighboring countries because of the success of the program for Planting for Food and Jobs. It has its downsides to the extent in which we're subsidizing fertilizers. You know, when subsidies come, there are always a few criminal elements that will want to take advantage of the subsidies to make a very delicate and difficult issue. But I think some things are obvious. Guta are right in their interpretation of the laws of our country. The laws of our country, until they're changed, have banned foreign people, foreigners, from engaging in the retail trade in our country, as well as in activities in our markets. They've reserved those for Ghanaians. So if people who are not Ghanaians, who are known not to be Ghanaians, are involved in it, people are entitled to get agitated about it. What we need to do, stress this agitation, is to be more rigid in enforcing the law, more strict about the enforcement of the law. And I'm hoping that the measures that have been put in place with the support of Guta, as they begin to work now, will make it possible and therefore bring down the decibel level. The Nigerians cannot complain about our enforcement of our own laws. They're doing it in their country. So they cannot complain, and there'll be nothing discriminatory about it. If they're Chinese or the Nigerians and everything, all of them should be part and parcel of the same pot in terms of the application of the law. What I'm hoping that we have been able to put some kind of a handle on is people taking the law into their own hands. That is why I made that intervention with the Guta and his leadership, that they cannot take the law into their own hands and by that go out of the way to start closing shops and all of that. That one is, there's no future in that. And if people take the law into their own hands over their own specific grievances, before you know, we have anarchy and we don't have a state. So that one, I'm hoping that they have taken that into account. But at the same time, I think the onus on us, the state, to make sure that our laws are properly applied. I don't think we can escape those. And we're going to make an effort to make sure that those laws are applied. And whilst we're doing this, I am keeping the lines open to our Nigerian brothers and leaders to let them know exactly what it is that we're doing and how we're going about it. But definitely, you will see some action in this area about our effort to. But by the converse, the closure of the border. You haven't brought that up. You should have brought it up. Yes, because that too is a big problem. There are over 300 Ghanaian trucks stuck on the border between Benin and Nigeria. Perishable goods, some of them have had to recall them, others are there going through very difficult circumstances. And we're also making all kinds of efforts to tell the Nigerians that this is not the way forward. We cannot have that as a permanent solution to the issue. So the discussions are on. And I think that the statement you made that the relations are at an all-time high is good. So it is enabling us to have those discussions in a constructive atmosphere. We can find solutions. I understand some of the problems that are on the Nigerians. You spend a lot of money trying to make yourself self-sufficient in rice, and then you see next door to you, large sums of rice are being imported by the country, which are twice the amount of rice that any people in Benin can eat. The obvious implication is that this rice is destined for Nigeria, and then the Nigerians are clearly alarmed about it. But we have to find a better solution than border closures to deal with international trade, and I think that all of us need to try and work on that. To the extent in which we're subsidizing fertilizers, you know, when subsidies come, there are always a few criminal elements that will want to take advantage of the subsidies to make rent money for themselves by smuggling it across. So it has been a problem, but it is not one which anybody is either sweeping under the table or being ignorant about. We're doing our best, these porous borders that we have, to be able to police our borders better and create systems of distribution of the subsidized inputs that make it more difficult for people to be able to smuggle them outside.
You had the president there talking about porous borders. Indeed, he links it to agricultural production, but also he goes on to talk about increasing military might and presence on the ground, especially up north with our borders with Burkina Faso, where a country which has been troubled by terrorists, and talks about how government is working to prevent terrorists from entering our own country. Let's get to the economy. The city is quickly approaching 6 cedis to $1, and it's definitely impacting the economy. What does the president make of it?
Both an expansion of our economy that is going to be able to deal with all the issues that we all know about: youth unemployment, income levels, cost of living. All of these are bundled up in how rapidly and how successfully our economy can grow. And for that to happen, we have to have a strong base. We have some fundamentals have to be in place. People are talking about the macro fundamentals. They are not just statistics. They are not just data for data's sake. They're statistics that have significance in the lives of people. High rates of inflation are not a statistic. They reflect in what happens in your pocket. They reflect in your ability to handle issues of daily living. So, how have we fared, for instance, on inflation? The weighted average of inflation this year is somewhere 8.3, 8.4%. It's a significant improvement on the figure that we inherited in 2017. And with it, the rate of decline of the depreciation of the cedi is much slower than what we saw in the past. That in itself is not a sufficient, is not necessarily the full comfort that we want. All of us are affected by this matter of the sea. But there are structural problems that we don't talk enough about as far as the currency is concerned. It is time for us to do so. Yes, I believe that the management of the currency in our time has been much more effective than the period before we came. Don't have any doubt about that. There's plenty of statistics. Mr. Mann is here. He can reel off those statistics for you very easily. But nevertheless, the structural problems are those that also we ought to talk about more. You need to be able to export more to earn more money. Our structures, how are they well geared for us to up the exports? That is why some of the initiatives we're taking on the ground, diversifying our basket of cash crops,